Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 70 of A Letter to the King. If you're new to the series, A Letter to the King is my attempt to keep us up to date with what's going on PvP-wise on the global server, the server that never sleeps. Let's have a look at where we were in the previous week. Okie dokies. So, the Brits have been pushed out of PAP by a pirate surge, and peace had held in the Antilles, so the French and Danish accord was holding with the division just right through the middle of the Antilles, I suppose. The Dutch, they didn't push on the Brits at all during the week. They seem to have consolidated their holdings here. There's still a cessation of hostilities between the Brits and the US up in the north. And that's where we were. The Brits have been rolled in PAP. They met a full fleet in Port-au-Prince, or 22 on 25 from memory, or 23 on 25, and they managed to take PAP in what was a bit of a good win for the pirates, and would set the tone for the week. Politically, not much has changed. The Brits are still at war, or they were at the start of the week, with both the French and the pirate forces. The pirates and the French were very much working together. Everybody else had reached a state of detente or neutrality. So let's have a look at what actually transpired this week. And poof, good grief, the map has gone black. So first of all, the pirates, in a rather surprising move, ran up hostility in about 10 minutes at Savannah-la-Mar, and the Brits tried to screen, but the pirates were camped outside the British port. I have to be honest, the British defensive fleet was a bit shit. Only a few guys were prepared to turn up in first rates, and the rest didn't risk it. And so the pirates steamrolled Savannah-la-Mar. I had a small Pyrrhic victory, capturing an enemy victory on the way in my Busanterre with another chap in a Bellona who also capped a victory, so we were pretty happy about that. I think only one of us made it back to port though. Elsewhere and later on, the pirates would then push on the British held Tiburon at Les Cays, or Les Cays I should say. I don't believe there was any real defence put up here. There may have been some screening, but no real defence in the port proper. The Brits were then rolled Little Cayman, or Great, whatever it is here. And again, I think this one was an undefended port, but I'll explain more as to why that was in a moment. So the pirates just went ping, ping, ping in a 2-day period, grabbing up a whole bunch of British territory. This is a very strategic holding. It gives you a springboard onto the South American coast. Meanwhile, the Danes seem to cede a bunch of ports to the Swedes, giving them Boven wins and another port. I think they ended up taking 2 up here. The French then did a rather large trip and ran up hostility at Santa Marta. Now the Brits did manage to get a full fleet in to defend this one, but then the French never turned up. The Brits then had to rush all the way over to Georgetown. They came flying out of the port, where they fell basically into the French trap. The French had decided not to contest the battle proper, but instead obliterated the British screening fleet and then caught their 4th-rate fleet as it was heading over to Georgetown, and inflicted heavy losses on the British 4th-rate fleet, which basically opened the door here for an uncontested port battle against the pirates. So cunning play by the French. Now, I'll get to more about this French contingent in a moment. So the French, although defeated technically in the port battle, won a lot of timber off the Brits. The pirates then, to rub salt into the wound. Now this is from the weekend. I was away this weekend. I was out of town this weekend. So wasn't here to see what happened. But the pirates ran up Portillo, I think this is, ran up hostility at Portillo, and I believe that this was taken uncontested, although I have to say, like I say, I've been away this weekend, and I only logged on for 30 seconds today to say hello to a couple of chaps and grab some screenshots. So the Brits lost Portillo as well. Now this has given the pirates access really to anywhere they want of the British strongholds. But in saying that, the pirates have then basically claimed a cessation to hostilities, and we'll get into this on the next thing I cover. The Americans, the Dutch, and the independent nations that fly under the Spanish flag, or independent tribes, I should say, that fly under the Spanish flag, really didn't get involved in any significant RVR this weekend. Oh, this week, I should say. So let's just have a little bit of a look at the capitulation of the Brits. So probably the problem for the Brits is that their major clans are split in multiple different areas, whereas the pirates coming out of their homelands form one large sort of rolling ball of pain. And the Brits, who are all on different comms and in different clans, were just no match cohesion-wise to the pirate threat. And I have to say, there's no other word for it than disappointed in the British response. Fundamentally, at the start of the week, after the collapse of a couple of British ports, one of the major British clans, one of the British clans turned and went French, and they were involved in the spanking of the British screener and exiting Port Battle Fleet at Santa Marta. And in fact, they've run up hostility again for this week at Santa Marta, and I do wonder how the British will respond, given that the previous week it proved to all be a bit of a sham and a bit of a trap that the Brits fell into and lost a lot of shipping. So one of the British clans went French. I don't really know why. They all had their reasons, and I'm sort of torn on this, right? Half of it is, make sure you have good fun. I have to say, British national chat and where the clans gathered to discuss things was pretty despondent, and there was a lot of negativity in there. One of the clans, like I say, went French. Another clan has joined the Danes, so that'll be interesting for the accord down here. Another British clan went to the Danes. A lot of individual British players actually went pirate, and the Brits are a much weakened force now. They've lost 2 clans, and a whole bunch of sort of individual captains have abandoned the Jack and raised the Black. And I'm so disappointed at the response of the Brits. It's a relatively small community, so when folks do flip over to the other side, it does put a dint in things. It's like a double loss, really. You lose the numbers on your side, and potentially your enemies gather numbers. Now, again, the other half of the conversation is these players are looking for fun, and if they're sitting there in national chat or TeamSpeak or Discord or whatever, and all they're getting is a whole bunch of QQ, you can understand them seeking fun elsewhere. Now the pirates have essentially said to the Brits, we're going to stop bashing you now. They've set some terms and conditions for this. They've made some claims on some land and sort of said that the British have to cede ports back to the US of all people, which is a bit strange. And it'll be interesting to see how the Brits respond. There's a few hardy souls who are saying, take a running jump at a rolling donut. And there's a few others who seem keen to acquiesce to pirate demands. So this week we'll find out if there is any British steel, or if it really is half a dozen loosely affiliated clans who quite simply can't get their shit together and put it on for the pirates. Most of the ports, apart from Savannah Lamar, fell out of a time zone that I could personally get involved in, but it's a global server, so I don't have a problem with that. And you have to make the best of things in your time zone, so I'll be speaking to my fellow Aussie chaps about what we can do as part of the British cause in the coming week. But the pirates are king of the hill right now, and the Brits are cowering. I need to change this to like a puppy dog or something. And like I say, two of the clans, one from the US time zone and one from the Oceanic time zone, have flipped colours, and a sort of smattering, a number of individual captains have gone and joined the pirates. Now, a lot of the Brits are complaining that the pirates use shenanigans to run up port battles and hide their fleets from British screening fleets, that the pirates have special abilities in that they can fight each other to hide, and so on and so forth. And look, some of that is true, but you have to recognise that pirate gameplay is closer to a nation. They do have this sort of half world where they've got all the mechanics of a nation and a couple of other mechanics too. But the game's still in development, chaps, so you know most of what they do is RVR. They probably worked on the basis on their initial port acquisitions that with the British having screener numbers, that they had to use stuff and things to be able to get into ports. But I should say it's from what I understand at Portillo, they didn't. They actually sent a screening fleet first and then the fleet proper. But then again, bolstered by the numbers, they can probably take the luxury to do that. So right now the British are on the back foot. Maybe the French will try and take advantage and go proper for Santa Marta and start pushing the Brits through the South American bight, through Venezuela and the likes. We'll have to see whether or not the Brits, the pirates have said they'll give Savannah La Mar back. Whether or not the Brits will be happy with Portillo and Georgetown staying black, I don't know. There's certainly really strategic points for the pirates to fight out from. It certainly shows how one well-coordinated group working together and working in a couple of time zones can stomp a broken or fractured nation. But we'll have to see how this one plays out, and whether or not these so-called terms that have been offered by the pirates are taken. Now you can look at the terms in two different ways. You can look at them first of all as the pirates being a bunch of cocky bastards and laying down terms for the Brits, but you can also look at, if you look behind the scenes a little bit, I think they recognise that the player base with the Brits has not responded at all well to defeat, and to some extent they're allowing the Brits to get their shit together so that, you know, the pirates have got a proper enemy to fight. So you can choose which side you want to sort of eat this one from. One side of it is the pirates flexing a bit of muscle and dictating terms, and the other side is possibly genuine as well, that having seen the capitulation somewhat of the British, they're looking for a bit of gameplay, and they'd rather give the Brits a bit of time to get their shit together, and then hopefully a more contested war could kick off, because I know that they enjoyed the battle for Pap, where they excelled in the battle itself. So we'll have to see where that one goes. As far as open world hotspots, well, it's just the normal areas. Portillo's going to be interesting. KPR is always hot. The bight here, probably that can disappear now that it's all black. And oh yeah, the pirates, I think this was this week, I can't remember if that was this week or not, but they also kicked the Brits out of the middle part of Cuba here. I'm pretty sure that was this week, because this is where I found my ghost ship trying to anti their hostility malarkey. This is always a hot area for open world sort of trader bashing and the odd open world scrap. Very hard to know where the fight is going to come next. Maybe the French might start kicking up around Santa Marta and then push on to Cartagena. There is some stories that the pirates are going to try and push up this way a little bit. we'll have to see. It's very, very difficult to predict now. And also with one British clan going French and one British clan going Danes, one has to imagine that detente in the Antilles is at least under threat. So let's have a look at what happens there. Big patch this week. So the last big patch before the developers are going to move us to Unity 5, the big patch came out as I was producing last week's Letter to the King. So most of you probably know about it, but just to go over some of the key points. So conquest marks and combat marks have been collapsed into a single unit, and you now get victory points. So basically after a week's RVR, they calculate using a point system who ran up the most points through port battle victories, and one nation will receive victory points. Those victory points will allow you to buy essentially some permits for some special ships. So the heavy rattlesnake is back, as is the Lego shoe that is called the Wappen van Hamburg. You can also run up hostility now to 100% with hostility bombs, which I must admit I think is a shit idea, but anyway. The victory points, I'm not as sure about this. I actually like the conquest mark and the idea that if you defended a port you had motivation to hold it. The victory points really only gives reward to one nation. So if you're one of the lesser nations, if you're not in that top 3 or top 2 nations on your server, you're really never going to get access to these victory points unless, and the victory marks that go with it, unless a nation chooses to sell or trade or use them as bartering tools. And I think it's a bad system, because I think it causes a bit of a death spiral. Those who don't have the victory points are going to struggle to get those ships. Now, you can still get most ships for most type of port battles, but probably the one that's the most ill-balanced is in the shallow water battles. The heavy rattlesnake is such a better ship in its class compared to, say, a well-tooled up Mercury. That the nation that's getting those victory marks is really going to be able to rock and roll in the shallow water battles. There are some of the other a couple of first rates that need the victory marks, but you can still access a first rate without them. The victory itself, ironically, is the one you don't need victory marks for. There's a new system called battle groups, and the theory is to help port battle fleets get into without being tagged by an idiot alt or whatever. If you're in a battle group, you can only be drawn into battle by another battle group. Now, I haven't really had much testing of this. I did have a bit of a problem where we were tagging a ship and going into combat and it wasn't there, and then coming out and then it would appear 5 seconds later on the water. I posted a video showing this. I don't think that was a battle group thing. I think that might have been some other sort of bug or malarkey. When you exit a battle now, the invisible time is extended a little bit, and you also get to travel at stupid speed o'clock. I was doing 40 knots in a second rate as I was exiting a battle, and the wind doesn't have an effect. So this is to sort of reduce the perennial revenge fleet, but it also opens up a few problems, like someone can hyperspace in next to you essentially, and as soon as their invisibility drops, you've got trouble now to shake them if they're in one of those fast ships that almost everybody on the open world uses. A really nice feature that they've added badly is you now get a clerk. There's a new channel called the Combat News, and you just hit the plus on your chat bar and you'll get Combat News. And whenever somebody gets sunk, it'll basically say a pirate player has sunk a British player off Savannah Lamar or whatever. And in theory that allows people to sort of go into that area because they know there's PvP there. The problem is that players can chat in that channel as well, so it's all a bit burka in there. It's like a new global. If they could mute that, that would be rather spiffy. There's a PvP leaderboard and you get some sort of reward. I've not been on the PvP leaderboard yet at the end of the day. And I think the top 15 players get some sort of reward. A new thing that they've added, thank God it's only taken 15 months, is that a clan leader can transfer control to another player. So that's good if your clan leader's going on holiday or jacking the game in or switching nations because he's a dirty scumbag or whatever. He can transfer clan leadership to someone else rather than you having to delete and recreate the clan. And they seem to have thrown in some free bugs, but we always get that. But essentially, the player news this week is that the pirates are kings right now. They are setting terms on this server. And really, the only anti to them at the moment is the Brits, and the Brits are a mess. So we'll have to see how that goes. On to the Dally of Splinters, Sail and Blood. A terrible week for the British. 22 ports, all to the pirates. The only other change was the Swedes took 10 ports off the Danes, or 2 towns off the Danes. I will start adding into this the tally board as well for the victory marks. I'll have to work out what day it flips over on and how I can get that into my letter without delaying what day it's released on. I've got a horrible feeling it's going to be pretty much the restart after I make Letter to the King, which would mean it would be a week out of date. So that's a bit shit. But perhaps I can work out what it's going to be from the day before. So that's me back from my week away to a pretty depressing landing as a British player, but a great week for the pirates. They are the kids on the block to test yourself against now and beat. I hope the Brits manage to get their shit together because it's a pretty grumpy monkeys national chat at the moment. And we'll have to see what the French get involved in next week and what happens now these clans, these British clans have joined the French and the Danes, who had recently just had a treaty and now have essentially new clans as part of their community. So that's it for this week's Naval Action. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. I'll see you on the ocean and I'll catch you.